For my third CMAP project, I am looking into the monolingual bias in special education using an article by authors Lim and Cheatham. The article is called A Socio-Cognitive Discourse Analysis of Monolingual Ideology and Bias in Special Education Partnerships. And what the authors were trying to look at is the communication difficulties between immigrant families who are non-native English speakers and special education professionals. And the framework is the intercultural communication, and how the culture relates to a communication style, and how these difficulties in the professional family partnerships have limited access to quality language services, and sometimes these issues can be overlooked. Because of this, special education professional partnerships with immigrant families could benefit from more critical discourse analysis of the monolingual driven communication, and the sociocognitive approach to critical discourse studies was used in this article to analyze 16 articles on the special education partnerships. The first topic that I would like to talk about is in the partnerships and looking at the partnership between parents and professionals. The special education partnerships related to intercultural communication and the way that professionals interact with families is one of the major research trends in identifying how the distinctive culture laden communication style affects the partnership. And so, identified in this article is the culture of indirect communication in high context cultures such as the Asian, African, Middle Eastern, Central European, and Latin American cultures. And these indirect communication styles include background information, contextual elements, body language, and interpersonal relationships in communication style. And low context cultures like the Western European and the Northern American cultures use more direct communication where people share information through explicit language and rules. And this idea through this framework is what helped the researchers in this article. The next topic that I would like to talk about is the language in the law and how the explicit language in the law affects the school professional bias and the relationship between the school professional and the immigrant families. The language in the law specific to this topic is found in IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the reauthorization of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or the ESSA. And the language in particular that appears in this policy is limited English proficiency. And using this language, what is promoted is monolingualism. And this language also infers status and an unbalance of power, and it devalues bilingualism, which in turn creates a bias for the school professionals as they work with bilingual students. Also, with IDEA and ESSA, specialized services are denoted, and giving specialized services to bilingual students really changes the partnership between the educator and the families that they serve. Specialized services compartmentalizes and categorizes disabilities to make specific goals that the specialized service personnel are working with a particular student. And this does not account for the parents' communication needs. And it also makes special educators unaccountable for effective communication with the parents of their students. Next, looking at the topic of school professionals and their bias. This limited English proficiency creates a bias within school professionals where they seek compliance from parents to be in monolingual communication norms or adhere to monolingual communication norms. And it also diffuses the responsibility for accommodating for the parents of bilingual students. Finally, in looking at the topic of socio-political construct, we can see here that the socio-political construct is also tied to the language in the law, in which immigrant bilingualism is seen as a deficit, and then that deficit becomes internalized for the bilingual parents. Language services are then outsourced, such as translation of communication, verbal communication, as well as written communication. And in seeing this communication need as a deficit, the school professionals internally view that need or deficit as human pathology, which gives the idea that professional services are rationalized, and it's not seen as a partnership of communication, but rather a service that is needed because of human pathology, and it is seen as a negative connotation. In looking at the full analysis and the full article, I'd like to conclude that the special education service system and its stakeholders, such as researchers, are engaged in processing the discourses which emerge from immigrant family school partnerships. And if using a sociocognitive approach centered on critical discourse analysis, we can say that socially shared cognition of monolingual ideology and bias that embeds in linguistic inequality in those communication partnership grounds between the school professionals and the immigrant families, the sociopolitics of the shared belief system, which shape the individual's cognitive processing of monolingual biased discourses in relation to their social linguistic identities, should definitely be looked at in creating a good partnership. And we really should look into innovative approaches to promote linguistically equitable partnerships. And it would be better if the special education system sees itself as a civic venue and its professionals can feel the power to disrupt the ideological disablement of immigrant families. And it is up to both researchers and school professionals to rearrange the structural imperatives so that we can increase a globalized partnership with our school parents.